All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Average Joe Show. I am your host, Joe Carrion. Been on a couple-week hiatus. Things have been pretty busy, but I thank you for you guys sticking in there with me. We have a very special guest today. Happy to kind of break into the Troy sector here. We have Trojan head football coach Jim Smith with me. Jim, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Jimmy and the Troy Trojans are fresh off a big win over Delaware. They won 8-3, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But Jimmy, I just kind of wanted to ask you, tell me a little bit about your background with Troy football. Did you grow up in Troy? Like, did you grow up watching the Trojans when you were a little kid? Tell me your story.
Yeah, I had a football disease from birth, I think. I grew up on a farm, and I was fortunate enough to have a dad that took me to all the football games. And I remember a lot of times, we'd let the cows drip milk to make it to an away game. And and then, that was generally on Fridays. And then on Saturdays, he'd bring me to Canton, and I'd watch Canton. And by the time, I was in high school, I felt like I'd watched more football than most adults. Played for Troy for 4 years, couple different coaching staffs. The legendary coaching staff of Mark Strzelecki was kind of on the way out, and Zalonis had come in, and then Dave Raynard after that, and loved all those guys, learned a lot from all those guys, and then a whole new group had come in, kind of changed the culture and everything, and that was my junior year. And of course, with change comes, some difficulties, and there were some difficulties in those times. And I always say I learned some things that I wouldn't do if I was a coach in my own mind at that time. Had the opportunity to do some junior high coaching in my early 20s, about 20 years ago. And in 2011, the job had come open here in Troy. And I'd talked for years about doing it. I'm a nurse. One of my best friends and colleagues and coaching associate, Joe Millard, also was a nurse. We were, had worked together. He had split ways and was in Troy as the school nurse, and he was doing some wrestling coaching. And when that job came open, actually the first thing I had done was called Coach Imp, who helps me, and said, "Hey, Coach, why don't you apply for that job? I'd love to come help you out." And he, was very involved with his boys, and said, I've been helping Coach Shooker and that bunch that was, had just left, and I'd be happy to continue, there, but I'm really busy. I can't adjust my life to focus on that with where I'm at. And why don't you apply? He said, and so. I did, and Coach Millard did, and my brother Kyle did. And interestingly enough, it was probably one of the most arduous interviews I've ever been a part of, and some interesting questions that you don't know how to answer, that kind of thing. I couldn't believe it. And a period of time went by, and then they didn't hire anybody, and then we were asked, there was a second round, and we were asked to come again. And I was just gifted this opportunity. I never played football in college, that kind of thing. Never thought that really I would have that opportunity. I wasn't a teacher in the school. I thought it was very, very low risk. So I said God's hand was involved in this for sure. And that's how it all started. I got the job. Coach Millard came on board with me. My brother Kyle came on board with me. Coach Imp stayed on as an assistant, and Coach Ammerman and Coach Wright were there previously and wanted to continue as assistants, and that's sort of how it all started.
You have a very specific style in which Troy plays football. You're very ground and pound, defensively minded. What inspired you to kind of install that into what you're doing? Is that what Troy did from the time you watched them?
Yeah, it's the only thing I've ever known. Okay, I grew up, like I said, through the Pee Wee midget era into, coming into high school under the Mark Strzelecki school of football, which was option and a little power football and play action pass, very basic stuff. But that was his thing. It was the only thing I knew. It's what I believed in. I always said for years and years, because I would go, to Friday nights I was in Troy and Saturdays I was in Canton, and I always used to tell my dad, I said, if we could if we could take Troy's offense and Canton's defense and mix it, we'd never lose. And because they were really known for many years over here in Canton for their defense, and it was what they were. They were very vanilla on offense, but didn't make mistakes, and they were clean. But defensively, they were, for many years known for just that's what they were known for. And so when I started, Coach Millard was from Canton, and he was under the Jake Schaefer School of Football, who everybody knows over here in Canton. And we started out running the 6-3, which is the only thing he knew and understood. And, for the most part, early on, we did pretty well with it until we came across teams like Loyal Sock and early on, and they were running some of the spread and Tawanda. And we just sort of found out that, as times have changed, the game has changed some, and we were wrong in what we thought. And we've adapted. We still use many principles, but we've adapted into a 3-5 or a 3-4. We run some 4-4s and 4-3 fronts. We kind of mix it up, and it's based on the kids that we have. But it's, done, to defend whoever it is we're playing, and we're not stuck on one thing, and we've kind of broadened our horizons a little bit.
Yeah, just as long as I've been covering Troy football, it's just awesome to see you guys being able to pound the rock and really impose your will on your opponents. While, like you said, the league has changed. They're going to the spread, they're going to the triple option, and it's just cool to see that culture of Troy football, staying true to itself.
Yeah, and I'm pretty proud of that. And I always tell everybody, the game hasn't changed. It's still won or lost up front, right? And I don't care what philosophy you're using. The guys up front on both sides of the ball, if they dominate the game, your chances of winning are much higher. So, we put a lot of emphasis on our guys up front. In fact, they don't get their name in the paper. They to the common man, they're not even seen, but to us, they're the leaders on the field, and we treat them as such. And they have it pretty tough too, but we really take care of them. I mean, they get fed special dinners and different things that we do for them that we don't do for the other kids. And they're aware of it, and our guys that score touchdowns really know that that their success is dependent on them. And so it's a good relationship and an understanding there, who's boss, and who butters our bread, if you will. So
yeah, you guys have had a really strong 3 to 4 year run right now. You're still in the middle of it. Last 2 seasons have ended against Southern. I'm sure. Have you seen the documentary about Southern?
Yeah,
you guys are in that. How does that make you feel, seeing your team in that documentary, when you're on the losing end? And what are you feeling this year? You feeling like this year you can kind of get over that hump with Southern? I mean, you've had 2 tough battles with those guys. I thought last year's was closer. It's unfortunate you guys ran into some tough weather, but how are you feeling about potentially seeing Southern again?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well known, whether they've been single A or double A. Now they're double A. They were single A for years. If you're going to get out of District 4 and into state playoffs, you have to beat Southern Columbia. Southern Columbia is, one of the best programs, not only in the state, but in the country. Their coach is one of 3 human beings on earth that has 500 wins. Like, these are unheard of things. And they would win at any level. Make no mistake. It wouldn't matter whether it was 5 or 6A. It would not matter. That's how clean they are. That's how good they've gotten. And, there's a lot of people that, are envious of that and, have some ill will and ill feelings towards that. And we've just sort of grown to accept that. If we want to make a run into the state playoffs, and we've had multiple teams that if Southern wasn't there, I feel like it could have been us. And there's many other teams like Mount Carmel in the same boat, but we're not going to cry about it. We're going to work to do what we have to do to put ourselves in a position to beat them. And I think that when the day comes, when and if it comes, it'll be worth the wait. And I think that as moving forward this year, there's a lot of great things that have to happen for us to be in that position. We have to stay healthy. We've had some issues already along the way, major stuff. And our luck in that way needs to change quickly. We have to stay healthy and, have to have the ball bounce the right way. And because we certainly, if I walk in there in week 12 or 13, if we're fortunate enough to, with our team, I guess it's week 13, I feel like we have a good shot at them. We're going to be able to match them physically and maybe even more so athletically than we've ever been before.
Yeah. You talked about growing up, you would spend Fridays in Troy and Saturdays in Canton. What does it mean to you to have the incredible runs that Troy and Canton football have had these last 4 or 5 years, just dominating the NTL, getting to state playoffs, you guys going to the brink with Southern? And speak to me about what that means for NTL football.
I mean, for me and then Coach Sechrist as well. We've sort of spoke about that. That's what I grew up with. It was Troy and Canton from the time I was 3, 4, 5 years old up until I was an adult. And every once in a while, a Towanda or Wyalusing would mix in there. But Canton and Troy really dominated our league for 2 decades, and then times before that with Canton. And so that's what I come to understand. And then in the late 90s, that sort of we both programs sort of dropped off for a period of time. And I've always had a dream of seeing that type of thing again. The old shoe game was one of the biggest rivalries in the area. It was more people showed up in the 80s and 90s even than they do now. There were times when 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people were there and 6 deep lining around the field, and one of the best rivalries in high school football, if you ask me. And to be able to get that back with both programs here the last 4 or 5 years, 'cause it's either been us or Canton really the last half a decade or even longer. It's really cool to see, and it's high school football. These things can change quickly, but we've sort of both built pretty good programs here and had a nice little run, and hopefully we can both keep that doing and run into the old shoe game with untarnished, both of us possibly.
Yes. Awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be speaking more with Coach Jim Smith. Thank you. All right, we are back here on the Average Joe Show, continuing our conversation with Trojan head coach Jim Smith. Jim, I want to talk to you about this last weekend. You tell me the story about how you guys got Dover on your schedule. How did that come to be? Did you lose a game? What happened with that?
Well, we had our 8 regularly scheduled, league type games, and then we had 2 open games. One we picked up was Central Mountain. That's there. And then we had an open week where for the last 1 year we've been trying to fill it. And we've had a terrible time trying to fill it. We had Central Mountain, Pocono Mountain West scheduled for a period of a month or 2, and then they backed out of it. And then we had some interest, but actually no takers. And I've just sort of felt that we're a bad hit for a lot of teams because we're a small school, So you're not going to get the points you need if you're a larger school. If you're another small school, most of them are just going to say no because of where we're at right now. And then the larger schools, it's a big risk. I mean, they take the chance of getting beat by this small school, and then if you do win, you end up not getting the points you need. And so this type of thing has gone on for a year. Our AD worked his tail off. We ended up here about a month ago starting to search out of the state, and they had the Mid Atlantic Pigskin Classic that was advertised on like Eastern PA football and stuff like this. And it's a showcase event that went from Thursday to Saturday. And there were 6 or 8 games played from teams, 2 teams from Pennsylvania, us being one of them. Downingtown West was another one. A couple teams from Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey. And some of these teams are real big boys. They're, football factories. They travel around the country and play football. And so, we sort of talked about it as a coaching staff, and hey, they have to let you in. And we got in contact, and they agreed to sort of let us in. And we're certainly the smallest school there by hundreds and hundreds of kids in a graduating class. And I was a little concerned maybe we bit off a little more than we can chew, because you go moving up 4 classes in size, and it's the depth and the amount of athletes and all that. I mean, it's a real thing. There's huge advantages that larger schools have over teams and that are our size. And so anyway, the coaching staff and I spoke about it, and we felt like it was more important to get a game than it was to have a bye week, even if it ultimately ended up in a loss as well. We thought either way it would be good for us. We had a season a year ago where we had 12 consecutive mercy rules, and then ended up with the best team in the state that we were in this 4-quarter war with. And hindsight being 2020, you go, well, maybe had we been tested a little bit earlier, that it's something that could have made a difference. And so we were just excited about the opportunity to compete at this level, and we had no idea whether we would be able to. And just proud of how the kids played and how they represented our area, and it was a really, really great opportunity for us.
I saw you spoke to Chris Manning, and one of the quotes you said with Chris Manning with Northern Tier Sports Report, guy does a great job. Check out his website. You said to him, you thought it'd be flip-flopped. You thought you guys would test them offensively and they would defensively, and it was kind of the opposite story.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, we got very limited film on them because they haven't played yet. They had a scrimmage, half of which was a 7-on-7, and the other half was only 20 plays of real football. And so there was very little you could get out of it. But watching them on film, offensively, they were very scary. They had quarterbacks that were throwing the ball 60 yards, multiple receivers that were 4.4, 4.5 range kids. Overall speed much faster than any team we've ever seen. And with that comes big plays and all those things. On the defensive side, in their scrimmage, they look to not tackle well, and it's early on, and nobody does. They look to be over pursuing. They look to be too far upfield. All this early stuff. And I said to the coaches, well, we may be able to catch them, over pursuing and being a little bit out of position. They're so fast, and it's a first game and they're still learning. And I think we can make some big plays on these guys because they're going to be seeing, I think, a style that they don't see much of. I don't think they see much option. And I think they're so fast and aggressive that we're going to be able to make some plays on offense. I was scared to death with our defense. They were just so athletic and big and strong and powerful and everything. And surprisingly enough, it was just the opposite. They were fundamentally very sound defensively. They were never out of position. If they were one step out of position, they recovered so fast, like nothing that I've seen at playing in any game that we've played. And we did move the ball just enough, and were able to eat clock just enough, and did make a play, and we left some points off the board. I think the second play of the game would have been a touchdown, and the pitch was a little off. It hit our tailback, was a little bit behind him. He didn't catch it. They got it, turned into points for them. But there was no one there, but that's really the last time we saw that. From there, they learned quickly, and we couldn't draw them off sides. These are things that like tell you that the team is very disciplined, and they were very disciplined. And I had this pre-existing thought that they weren't going to be, but they were. And then offensively, our kids maybe had the best defensive effort I've seen doing this in my 15 years. I mean, we prepared them the best that we could, but they just made plays when they had to make plays, and we didn't give up anything big, and we made them earn every single inch that they got. And I think, to be honest with you, that it surprised them as well. So I was really proud of how the kids handled themselves against a really good team.
Do you feel in a game like that your kids kind of like reached down inside themselves and pulled something out that they didn't know was there, or is it something that you've known is there and they just kind of finally saw that true potential?
I think I've always known with this group that it's there. This group isn't afraid of anybody or anything, and they're not afraid to lose either. And this group, really, you can count on one hand since the time they were in first grade how many losses they have, literally. And so they're a great group of kids, and they're very intelligent. Their athletic intelligence is, sometimes they amaze me with the questions that they ask, and there's very few times that you necessarily want to listen to players, but in the case of this group, if they've got something to say, my ears are open, because they know what they're talking about. There's a lot of game experience. Most of these kids a lot of them have been starters for 4 years. A couple years ago, I think we started 6 freshmen, and they won 9 games with them. So, and played really high level competition with Bald Eagle and Loyal Sock and Southern Columbia. And our schedule the last 10 years has not been like anyone else's in the league at all. It's more out of league opponents that are highly state ranked. And I really, for a while felt like we were being picked on, Jersey Shore multiple times, and Bald Eagle area multiple times, and teams like Binghamton, and we hit the Waverly thing here a few years ago, and they had a great ball club, and many schools that are just powerhouses. And I've always felt like, geez, I feel like we're being picked on a little bit. I don't see the rest of the league doing this, and I always, kind of blamed it on everyone's after Troy. But whether that was the case or not, I believe it was. But it's helped us because, these kids have seen really, really good football. And, it sort of hit at the time where you have the people to be able to deal with it. And it's been really good for us.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you this question. Troy Trojans win district title
if we stay healthy and have our kids.
Comes down to health.
It comes down to being we have to be at full power. The trouble, and I think that holds true for most teams, but I think our chances are good, as long as disaster doesn't strike. But it's, we've had a lot of great seasons, Joe, but we're not immune to the everyday drama that goes on in a high school football team. There's so many things that got to go right. The grades in the school, and, the trouble that comes on to youth, and injury, and, people quitting. We've had a couple, guys who were starters that have, it wasn't for them and have walked away. And these things that you really struggle to understand or accept as even something that could happen does. And it's everywhere. It's not, you talk to the coaches around the league, and boy, you could write memoirs and a book that would be a bestseller with some of the stories that go on, with a high school football team. So, as long as we stay healthy and don't destroy ourselves, with things that happen, I think we have a great shot.
Yeah. Um, Quickly, who is your coaching inspiration? Locally, big time. Like what guy kind of inspires you to be who you are?
And that goes back to my childhood, but watching all the Troy games from the time literally from the time I was like 4 years old, and in the Canton games, and going and watching that, and I'm telling you, when I was a senior in high school, like I knew what Canton was running when I was on the field. I knew their 2 point conversions. I knew like I'd seen so much of it, but in my mind, it was, those old legends like Jake Schaefer and Miller Moyer and Coach Strez and his group, and you know, uh, even Wyalusing and old Jack Young, and they all were the same. They all played power football. It was muddy, it was dirty, it was like the tougher, team won, the team that tackled the best and blocked the hardest, and all those things. And in my mind's eye, like I still can't leave that. Like the game is still played in my mind. Like I look at some of the stuff that's going on, and I go, to me, it's a disgrace, and like, it's like after, Saturday's event with, against a team that they've got kids with offers all over the place, Division 1 offers. Okay. We don't get that in Troy. So we're doing a lot more with less. And where's the disservice? You know what I mean? And it just sort of reiterates that what we're doing is the right thing, at least for here. And, I believe in, in old school football, and I think the less kids have to think, and, the more in shape they are and the stronger they are and all those things, those are our values, and our core values is strength, conditioning, and then just old school football. And if a team's going to beat Troy, they're going to have to be tough at least. And I think that that's something that's in our advantage, because the world is really becoming very soft. It's even the game of football. The big push with, the safety and the concussions and the hitting and all of this stuff. It's a violent game that's meant to be hard. It's a great game for those reasons. But in general, I think the world has become soft in general, in every way, and it's being taught that. And so, like, I refuse to change that in our team. And the minute that culture, we're not able to continue that culture, I'm gone, because it's the only thing I know.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say? I see the Guardian. You've seen the Guardian caps in the NFL. I've seen they're sneaking into college. I've even seen some high schools start wearing them. Are you for something like that, or?
We had Guardian caps that we had bought clear back in 2013, and we had a really good team, and we did have some concussion issues. I'm not a huge fan of those, and the reason is, and we did use them, but the shear that you get, like, when two helmets like this, they kind of there's no shear effect. You get that cloth on there, and like, I don't know, is the value is really there to me. And I'm a medical person as well, and I can say that, like, if you hit the back of your head on the ground, like our whole, most of our concussions that I see are normally not like a head to head thing, like someone hits their head on the ground. So if it's a speed thing, so when you're, irregardless of maybe how soft you make it, when you're coming to a stop, when that brain comes to a stop and it's going at a certain speed, and smashes into the back of the skull, that gives the concussion. I'm not sure there's really anything that does a great job. Now I know some of the guys are using Q collars. Um, and the theory behind that is it doesn't let the brain, the venous blood from the brain drain. So the brain actually swells a little bit and the space in the brain is less. Another thing that I think has value that I try to talk to all the kids about, one of the most widely studied, supplements is the creatine. The creatine does the same thing. You got to stay hydrated, but it's proven to be good for head injury too. And so I'm not sure on the Guardian caps, and I felt like when we had them, I didn't feel like that there was a change, and we used them in practice all the time at those times. But still, if you hit your head and it comes to a complete stop, the thing that I sort of don't like about them is if two kids collide, you don't get the glance it because of the cloth. There's like that shear, which can, then you got the neck injury and stuff like that. So I'm not sure. I think the best thing to do is, try to teach good tackling and try to, reiterate and practice to stay off of each other and not use your head and talk about things in that way. Get kids off if there's been a big collision. We just had it in this game, and I don't think, but just for safety, just it's not worth it. Get them off there and keep them out if there's any concern at all, and let them heal if there is any, and not to let them go back until they're cleared. But this is something that we're not going to get away with in football, and we're not going to get away with it in basketball, and we're not going to get away with it in soccer, and but there definitely is a big push, and it's a funny thing because our equipment 25 years ago was way worse. It wasn't anything remotely like this, and they didn't have all the concussion. In fact, you didn't get removed from the game because you had symptoms even then. They said they called it something else. Well, he knows where he's at. He's okay. And it seems like they've really pushed this agenda for some reason to its highest level, but we're not going to get away from it in any of the sports. You hit your head hard, you fall off a horse, fall out of a tree, wreck a car, you're going to get these concussions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're playing football. You know what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
I feel like the whole safety thing, it's just trickled down from the NFL to college to high school, and I feel like it's watering down the on-field product a little bit. I don't personally agree with what they're doing. I mean, I understand why you have movies coming out like Concussion, the Will Smith movie, where it talks about the CTE, and you've seen some cases with it, but ultimately, I think that when you sign up for this game, you kind of have to figure out what you're signing up for.
Yeah, I think so too, Joe. And it's like if you go hunting and end up getting hit by a stray bullet, you know what you're signing up for. And if you're driving a car and you're rear-ended at a stop sign, I mean, if you cross a road and there's all these risks in life. But I think we have to be smart about these things. There's always these stories, and that's the thing with, 25 years ago, the information wasn't obtainable about an event that happened 1,000 miles away like it is now. And so these one or two cases that come up throughout the country are sensationalized and everybody knows about them. And, and this is what it causes these stirs with everything is the media and its ability to proliferate information quickly, and but I don't think it's a bad thing for the sport, the safety, but it's been a bad thing for football. There's a lot of kids that got so much more to gain than the risk of a concussion, and that is. And I'm not trying to downplay it, but it's, very, the recovery is normally not an issue. And I'm not saying that there aren't problems with these repeat from the time you're 8 years old till that you're in your 15th year in the pros and you've been knocked unresponsive 400 times. But to have, a high school kid worried about these things, I think is is a little overkill, if you
Yeah.
ask me.
Yeah. Well, Coach Smith, I appreciate you being here today. It's been a good interview. I got one last question for you. I think I might have already asked you this, but I just got to kind of hammer this point home. NTL football feels like you guys can't, and even in the mid 2010s, Wellsboro, North Penn, Mansfield, you've really put NTL football on the map. What does that mean to someone like you?
Well, I think it means a lot to all of us, and I think it means something whether you're Towanda or Wyalusing or anytime we get to leave any one of these teams, our league, and we've got to do it a lot over the last 10 years. We just got this scenario in Wilmington that we got to do, but there's the NTL, it's the big joke, the no talent league, and you hear that 100 miles from here. That's sort of what it's known at on all the forums and stuff like that. But really, when you look back through the 2000s, there's been multiple, really, really good football programs, including Wellsboro, including South Williamsport, that's been to two semifinals, multiple district finals. You got Canton with their run that they had, and if they weren't the best team in the state, they were the second best team in the state. Our run that we had, and you're again comparing it to maybe one of the best football teams in the whole country as a program in Southern Columbia, small school, public school, and I'm really proud of where our league is. And although you're never being in an area where you're lucky to have 30 kids on the football field, you're never going to have 10 teams that are playing at a high level. But in the last 10 or 12 years, there really have been multiple teams and programs in our league that have represented, our District 4 valiantly, if you ask me. And I think we're leaps and bounds ahead of where we were 30 years ago. And so if these programs outside of our area want to take us lightly, that's great. It only benefits us.
Well, Coach Jim Smith, thanks for being here today. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe.
Appreciate it a lot. Thank you to our sponsors, Building 9 Grill in Troy. Make sure you check out Charlie and what his staff are doing. They do an excellent job at that restaurant. It's a vibe, people. Bringing excellence back to Troy. Check out Welsh Insurance here in Canton. Go see Ryan Allen to save you some money on your home and car insurance. That guy can save you a ton of money as well. Thanks for being here, guys. We have another episode coming up this weekend. We're going to talk Troy School Board. Thanks for watching The Average Joe Show.